Okay, so Fresno County, first of all, 6,000 square miles. As you take a look at that, if you can put it into perspective, the county of Fresno is larger than the state of Rhode Island, the state of Connecticut, and the state of Delaware. In the United States, we are 48 out of the top 100 most populous counties. We're 43rd in size. And when you think about the whole United States, there's over 3,000 counties or parishes in total. Every single color you see there in all the little different blocks represents a beat, which means a deputy sheriff is assigned to work a specific beat in the county to answer calls for service. So as you can see, the square mileage of these beats are huge. Each one of those get assigned to one deputy sheriff. Our total budget. So the Fresno County budget is over $2 billion. The sheriff's office is 9% of that total budget, or $178 million. Now, as many of you might know, out of that $2 billion, most of it is pass-through money. So there's a total of about $314 million that's considered net county costs or general fund monies. The sheriff's office gets 28%. When you take a look at our total budget, half of it comes from the discretionary funds from the board. A full half comes from third-party funding. So we get grants, we get contracts, and there's Prop 172, which is a special public safety tax that we get. So really only half of our budget is funded using net county cost or general fund monies. Our personnel, we have 1,072 people that work at the sheriff's office. And this is how I get this question asked a lot. So how many deputies do you have? The deputies that work in the courts and in patrol and detectives is about 411. So if you take a look at our sheriff's office, we're divided really up into three specific groups. We have deputies, we have correctional officers that work in the jail, 441, and then we have our professional staff. You know, I describe the professional staff as, I use a car analogy, a vehicle. What's most visible is the outside of the car. You see our correctional officers, you see our deputy sheriffs, but what you don't see is the oil that makes that car run. And that's our support staff, our dispatchers, our office assistants, and our secretaries that truly is integral into what we do. How we do what we do. I want to make sure that you see. Any way that we need to transport ourselves into any part of Fresno County, we've got it. One thing that's not shown is our fixed wing. In addition to the snowmobile and the Sea-Doos and our mounted posse and our pickups and our helicopters, we also have a fixed wing. But when you take a look at the size of Fresno County and you think about from 14,000 feet in elevation down to the valley floor and all of the waterways in between, we need the ability to respond to cries for help from our community members in all of these different ways. We drive, when you mentioned gas prices, we drive 5 million miles a year. So you can imagine a difference in pennies in fuel cost, what that can do to our budget. 5 million miles a year. So how we respond to the sheriff's office has to correspond to what our focus is. I put it into 4 easy things to remember that every single person in the sheriff's office should know. We call it JMAG, adequate jail space, methamphetamine and marijuana, ag crimes, and gangs. Just about everything we do revolve around those kinds of issues. I was having a conversation with some of our farmer friends before the breakfast this morning, and we were talking about our ag crime task force. Sergeant Heshaw is here, who is in charge of that unit. For decades in our farmlands, we've been dealing with metal theft of the irrigation pipe or sprinkler heads, those kinds of things, and it just became really noteworthy in the past few years when these thieves started moving into urban areas and taking things like streetlight wire. But we've been dealing with this for decades. We are truly subject matter experts. We have a network of law enforcement professionals connected in the Central Valley so that we can talk to each other about metal thefts and what the trends are in our areas, and when it comes to specifically metal theft, because it's such a huge commodity and the quick cash is there for people when they steal metal. Jail space. We were fortunate enough to get money to build a local jail. Did you hear in the news about our broken water pipe New Year's Day? Do you know it's the old pipe, asbestos cement, that goes into our old jail. However, through that water pipe, it supplies the courthouse, hall of records, our jail, our sheriff's administration building, and that infrastructure is getting very, very old. And I'm very glad, and it's because of realignment, the state provided money for local building to build capacity because of the responsibility now that belongs to counties as a result of realignment. So we've received $80 million. The West Annex, we have the architectural plans, we got the first draft, will go in the parking lot behind our jail facilities right now. Very sorely needed. Think of the year 1941. I know probably most people in this room weren't born yet, but that's where the core of that old jail, that's when it was built, in 1941. It needs to go. So we feel very fortunate to be able to move forward with that. That's a big project of mine as I move into my next term as sheriff. Marijuana and methamphetamine. You know that we've taken a very, very strong stance in partnership with our Board of Supervisors in a marijuana ordinance. I will show you some stats here in a little bit on some of our violent crimes. But what I try and tell people is it's not about the medicine, it's about the money. Thousands of pounds of marijuana from Fresno County is distributed every year throughout our nation. It's about drug trafficking, and it's about profit, and it's about greed. It's not about medicine. When you need your medicine, where do you go? You go to your drugstore, where you know that the prophylactic dose is measured and regulated, and you know what you're getting. People don't know what they're getting that's being grown in these fields. The pesticides and the herbicides being used, they use the fields for their bathrooms. It is just a horrible, horrible thing to see when you walk into some of these marijuana grows. But it's a mess. California marijuana laws are a mess. Ag crimes, I talked a little bit about that. It's a very important issue to me that is the #1 economic factor in Fresno County. So we have to make sure that we protect that economy, because it directly affects the sheriff's office and your businesses, and we have to make sure we do a good job. We have to be experts in both urban and rural policing. When you take a look at the sheriff's office and what we do and the territory we have to cover, it's an awesome, awesome responsibility. Gangs. I have a personal philosophy about gangs and our enforcement. We continue to have an involvement in our MAGIC unit, multi-agency gang group. It's commanded by a highway patrol commander, and we are all over Fresno County. You may wonder about why I don't say some of the things that I don't say when we talk about gang enforcement and arresting gang members. I will not give gang members credit that they want. I won't name the gang they're in. I won't talk about what gang they're in. I don't even mention what it is. Well, if you want to know that information, we'll give it to you. But they love the recognition. We are so bad that we are being named in the media, and I won't do that. I'll call them lowlifes, I'll call them cowards, I'll call them everything but the names they're proud of. I've refused to be involved in television shows like Gangland. Just for that, we have a jail program on cable that wanted to come in and do a special on gang life in the Fresno County Jail. I said, no, we're not going to glamorize what they do, and I'll continue to do that. We believe in community-oriented policing, and we have never left that philosophy. Even during economic downturn, we never told the public we don't go to that kind of call. And as I look around to many of you, I thought, you're all taxpayers. You support the economy in Fresno County. Most of you probably live in Fresno County, some of you may not. But the one time you need a law enforcement agency and you pick up the phone and you get a recording is a travesty. You get a live person when you call the sheriff's office. The one time you call a law enforcement agency and they say, sorry, we don't go to those kinds of calls, you have to file an electronic report, that's a travesty. The one time you need us and you pick up your phone and you pay your taxes for us and we say, we can't help you, we're not coming, is just wrong. We make available telephonic reporting or electronic reporting if you want to. It's very, very minimal about what you can. You can have no known suspects. It's not an emergency. It's not an ag-related crime. It's not a loss of a firearm. It's not a loss of a vehicle. And it's not a residential or business burglary. Those things we will send a deputy on because those are our target crimes. The way we start solving crimes is by responding. That's how we start solving crimes and talking to neighbors and canvassing neighborhoods. And we do a pretty darn good job at it. On our electronic reports, I will tell you that those that use that system and you have a crime that's eligible, for instance, an insurance report. You have a cold theft and you want to report it online because you're required by insurance. That's a perfect example of how the online reporting can help you out. This shows you how the deputies are allocated. So each badge represents a deputy sheriff. And as you can see, it's pretty slim pickings out there. Our backup is not right around the corner. What you learn as a deputy as a result of this, you really learn community-oriented policing and you learn how to talk to people. And we have to work with our communities to solve problems. We don't do it all alone. And so because of that, as you can count, there's, 15 to 20 stars up there? So right now, in Fresno County, we have about 20 deputy sheriffs answering calls for service county-wide. Dispatched calls. I know consolidation is very important to the chamber, so I wanted to include how our consolidation efforts work. We dispatch for these other cities. So you can see Sanger, Parlier, Orange Cove, Herman, and Fowler. They contract with us for calls for service. In 2014, we got almost 625,000 calls for service. We actually dispatched the numbers that you see up there. The Sheriff's Office represent about 69% of our calls for service that we actually dispatch. Court services. So we're going to leave patrol for a minute and go to another big responsibility. Remember I talked about that half of our budget that's contracts and grants? Our largest grant is our court services. It's just over $15 million. So our deputies work with the courts and they have a security council and they let us know what they're interested in as far as security. So if any of you go into the courthouse, you got to go through the metal detectors and it's the big shakedown, but it's important. It's important. So just with our court security, that 46,000 people we transport to court, that's just over 200 a day, Monday through Friday, on court days. $1.2 million, or million people are screened going through all the court facilities. And yes, we've got about 32,000 confiscated items that come through, and they're items that range from guns, chemical agents, knives, the new credit card knives you see, you can't take those into the courthouse. handcuff keys, and even tasers we've caught at the doorway going into our courtrooms. Now let's talk about crime. When we talk about crime is going up, crime is going down, it depends on how you measure it. Is it short term? Is it long term? I really like to take a look at long-term trends. We pay attention to the real-time, day-to-day crimes that come in. We take a look at what's happened since 2007 with crimes in Fresno County. The green line is larceny. So as you can see, with the BCS is a Bureau of Crime Statistics. It's what we're required to report to the FBI regarding our crime rate. So steady decrease in theft in Fresno County since '07. Burglary is also going down. It is the darker blue line. So as we take a look at this, I really want to bring your attention to vehicle theft, because we've made a big impact on vehicle theft since 2007 in Fresno County. These numbers are hard to see, but vehicle theft is the last number in the bottom. So in 2007, in Fresno County, we had 991 vehicles stolen. In 2014, we had 558. So that's a huge decrease. In almost less than half of the vehicles that were stolen in 2007 are now being stolen in our areas. So as we take a look at that, we know that what we're doing is working, and I'm very proud of the work that we do. For our vehicle thefts specifically, I want to draw attention, it's a task force that we are partners with Clovis PD, the Highway Patrol, and the Sheriff's Office. And we work as a task force to address chop shops and stolen vehicles that we get, and it's very, very successful. We really started making an impact when we contracted specifically for 3 beds in the jail to make sure that we held the most prolific auto thieves in custody. I want to talk about the jail consent decree, because I get asked by people, well, why do agencies have to contract for beds? And I'll tell you this quick story about our consent decree. Started in 1993, then Sheriff McGarrian was being sued for overcrowding in the jail. And just to let you know, even today, we are not overcrowded because we are prohibited from being overcrowded. Okay, so if there's any federal judges out there listening, we are not overcrowded. We're not violating your consent decree, judges. So we got sued. We were going to lose, and the judge said, or Sheriff McGarrian said, Judge, we will not overcrowd if we can triple bunk in our jail. How many of you have been in a tour? Been on a tour in the jail? I know many of you have. So when you look and you see these triple bunks, that's as a result of the consent decree. Our facilities were designed to only double bunk. So we're allowed by a federal judge to triple bunk. We added about 1,000 beds, that's 30% to our system. But the judge said, the caveat is, once you reach a certain percentage, you must release. And we made that agreement. Not such a bad deal. Increase capacity by 30%, but once we get to capacity, we must release. So that's how that works. So the heat team contracted for 3 beds. We've always, on contract bed, made them exempt from the federal consent decree. So it fits. It's a good policy. We can justify it. So contract beds are exempt from the federal consent decree. So total, as we take a look at this, burglary since '07 is down 35%. Larceny or thefts are down 55%. Auto theft is down 44%. Now, one of the questions is, well, Sheriff, could it be that people aren't reporting the crimes? I would believe that if, and go back to my earlier comments, if we had refused to go to crime, to go to certain calls for service, I would take that into consideration, because people would say, they're not going to come anyway, so I'm not going to call. We never had that philosophy. We always responded to calls. So I don't think that's going to be accurate. I believe it's good police work, and I believe it's a trend statewide and nationwide that matches this, that crimes are going down. Now, let's talk about crime going up. Homicides, as you can tell, between 11 and 14, we've had a trend up. Still not as high as what it was in 2007. I want to bring your attention to 2012. 6 of those 15 homicides happened as related to marijuana grows. That's about the time we decided we needed to take some really tough actions against some of our marijuana issues in Fresno County. Rape, robbery, and assaults, these are the violent crime categories that we report. So as you take a look at this, you can see there's been a steady decline since 2007. Our property crimes continue to go down. This is what we report to the feds. Now, see that yellow line that runs vertical towards the end of that graph? That was when Prop 47 was approved in November. Prop 47 made many felonies misdemeanors. So automatically, felony crimes, a lot of drug crimes, a lot of white-collar crimes such as forgery, which is important to you and your businesses, forgeries, as well as commercial burglary. Anybody now can go into any of your business when you're open for business during the daytime and steal. They can have the intent to burgle, but they can steal as long as it's under $950 over and over and over again. It will never be a felony. It will always be a misdemeanor. That's what Prop 47 did. So this is what it did to the jail population. Prior to Prop 47, at our height, we had about, our average daily jail population was about 2,900 people. Today it's about 2,500 people. This is what it did to the bookings. So law enforcement officers are now citing people on the misdemeanors rather than booking them in felonies at the jail. And this is what it's done to our crime rates. So as you can see, the yellow line still represents Prop 47. The blue line are property crimes. So when we say as a result of Prop 47, this is how we know. So one of the things I think about is, okay, is it fair to blame Prop 47? Well, I have to look at this time last year to see if it matches the trend. So we had a little uptick, but nothing as dramatic as this. So this represents property crimes, this represents violent crimes, a little bit of an increase here, but we'll see if that's really going to be a trend. But this is dramatic. Technology, I will invite all of you to take a look at our website. It is second to none. We have a fantastic website at the Sheriff's Office, fresnosheriff.org, O-R-G, and I want to commend Chris Curtis. He took this on as one of his last projects with the Sheriff's Office to really improve our interaction between electronically using technology with our public that we serve. And you can get to many sources of information from our website. We use YouTube. We have our YouTube channel. Tony is really ramping that one up to get our message out there in our own words, which is very important to us. We Facebook. I tweeted last night how eager I was to come and speak to the chamber this morning at Eggs and Issues. So we tweet, we use Nixle. You can go on our website and sign up for alerts in your area regarding crime. Our crimereports.com, you can also register so that if something happens in your neighborhood on a map, you can bring it up and get an alert saying there's been a burglary right down your street. We use predictive analysis. Every Monday morning I have an executive staff meeting where we actually show where we predict crimes are going to occur next based on the information that we get during the week. So this way deputies can really concentrate on those areas where crimes are predicted to happen. Now the hard part is if they're in that area and crimes don't happen, we may not ever know because it's hard to measure what doesn't happen, right? But it gives us a direction to go when we try and predict where these crimes are going to happen. Our camera systems, we have camera systems throughout Fresno County on our critical infrastructure, which is very important, especially in light of terrorism that could happen. If we cannot believe that it won't happen here, we are involved heavily with our federal partners to try and keep you safe. We're listening to the chatter out there to make sure that it's going to be frontline law enforcement. It's going to be frontline law enforcement that notices when something is going. It's not going to be an FBI agent. It's going to be frontline law enforcement that sees that suspicious vehicle or sees those suspicious people. So it's more important than ever now that we're communicating with our federal partners. Our volunteers, we literally have hundreds of volunteers in our sheriff's office. You saw the picture of our mounted posse, the guys in the horses and the orange shirts. Those are volunteers. We have our, we'll call them our jeepers. If you have four-wheel drive vehicles and you want to get involved, let me know. If you like to hike, you can get involved in our mountaineer unit. Our citizens on patrol, very active in Sunnyside and the Riverdale area. In fact, Sunnyside, I believe, is the oldest citizens on patrol group in Fresno County. They will actually go to your neighborhood and conduct training on how to have a successful citizens on patrol program. Our air squadron, we have citizens who have their own private airplanes that we can call if we need additional air support. What we pay for, we give them the training. So if you've ever heard of our Hotter Than Hell Every Other Year Fly-In, that is the air squadron volunteers from all over the nation. We have the oldest volunteer air squadron west of the Rockies. It's been going on for many years, and I'm proud of them. What we pay for them is their fuel. They donate their equipment, they donate their time, and they help us out. That's for all of our search and rescue volunteers. Our 108 Reserve, it's a CRIM 108 program at Fresno State, where we try and grow our own. It's getting harder and harder to recruit law enforcement professionals, especially lately. It's not the thing that a lot of young people want to do. And then once we do get applicants, it's very difficult to get somebody to pass a background test. So I'm not kidding, you can't be a felon. We've had felons show up for their interviews and say, sorry, you can't work here. They know all about, they want to work in the jail because I was just there last week as an inmate. I know how this works. I want a job now. We're pretty particular about who we hire, as I think you expect us to be. So we try and grow our own with our CRIM 108 program at Fresno State. We have uniformed field reserves and our chaplains. Not only do we have our patrol chaplains, but we have over 200 volunteers that come into the jail of all faiths and minister to our jail inmates. I want to talk, again, I know the chamber is very interested in consolidation, so I'm going to talk about our training unit, and Lieutenant Salazar is also here from our training unit. So our range, in fact, many of you who have your CCWs may have taken classes there up on Weber Avenue, where our shooting range is. Our shooting range is widely used. Again, our partnership is with Clovis Police Department as well as the Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Office. We're the three main law enforcement agencies that run and make improvements and use that range. We have contracts with and other users, 9 federal agencies such as the ATF, the DEA, the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Naturalization, or ICE, uses our range. Not to mention 16 state agencies, such as the California Department of Justice, California Department of Forestry, CSU Fresno, the Police Department, the California Youth Authority, and our local agencies, Clovis Police Department, Kerman Police Department, Fowler Police Department. So it truly is a consolidated effort, our range up on the river in Fresno County. Recently, our Sheriff's Foundation for Public Safety has purchased that range. It used to belong to a nonprofit. It was Fresno County Peace Officer Association. Now it belongs to the Sheriff's Foundation for Public Safety, a nonprofit. So they're going to be able to do some fundraising, make even more improvements, and improve the range sites as well as our building that we have there. High-speed rail is going to take off a little corner of that range. However, we're already meeting with them to talk about some of the mitigation for losing a piece of that range. So I'm very eager to see how much better we can make that location as we move forward. I want to make sure there's a lot of time for questions and answers. And I want to wrap up by telling you how proud I am of the men and women of the Fresno County Sheriff's Office. They work very, very hard under very difficult circumstances. I don't know how many of you had to drive and how far you had to come in the fog today. But think about law enforcement being out there in the fog like today and having to find an address or a farm or an orchard or a vineyard. And think about the challenges that we have, not to mention just being safe. I do want to commend the Fresno County Board of Supervisors. We are recovering. The financial outlook is getting better. It feels very good this time of year to be thinking about how we want to look as we rebuild our sheriff's office, not to just duplicate what we had in the past, but how should we look based on real empirical evidence and studies about how we should look. And that's an exciting thing to be able to do. This past budget year, we were able to add 8 deputy sheriffs after losing about almost 100 since 2007. So we're moving in the right direction. I want to recognize Supervisor Betty Mendez for being here this morning. I know that during the campaign you heard a lot about public safety and needing more sheriff's office employees. So thank you so much for listening. I really am eager and optimistic about how we're moving forward. It's all good. So with that, I want to make sure I answer any questions that you all might have, or if you've heard me speak before and talk about something you thought was interesting, bring it up and I'll do it again. So, any questions? Oh no, you're not going to let me off the hook that easy. Yes, ma'am. So her question was, how are we using these to garner information? We get so many tips from other people's Facebook pages. And here's the warning to all of you. Be careful what you post. Not that you're committing crimes, but all we need to do is, if they don't personally put it on their Facebook page, we look at their friends. What are they posting on their Facebook? We follow the threads. And so we do get information that way. What people tweet is just, it's Merry Christmas for us. Because we will use that. Even if they remove it, we'll take a screenshot of it so that, yeah, it was here. This was what was taken. From a business point of view, what's important, I think, for you is to make sure that you do background checks on people. It's getting more and more important to do that. I know there's some privacy issues with your employees and what they say on Facebook and maybe what some actions that you can take. But I think forewarning is really important. You can let your employees know. Just be careful about what you say and what you do and who you associate with. But we do absolutely use social media to get clues about what we do. Great question. Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for that. Her question was, she never heard the partnership with Fresno Police Department. They are part of MAGIC. They're not part of HEAT, but they are part of MAGIC. They, like us, have somebody assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. They are also part of our HIDA program, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. They have a police officer assigned to that. So it's another task force that we have. It's a large agency, and frankly, the larger you are, the more you can stand on your own. And for instance, they used to be part of HEAT. They separated. Now they have their own auto theft unit. Their choice. Yes, sir. Yeah. Great question. His question was, how are we involved in regards to terrorism, especially in light of current events? The FBI has a JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Force. We have a body on that. So we get real-time information as the feds get it here locally. This really happened as a result of 9/11. After 9/11, because as you know, communication and how we talk to each other was sadly lacking prior to New York and the World Trade Center airplane incidents. Since then, there's been a conscious effort to work together. Al mentioned the Exemplary Partnership Award from Homeland Security. It's as a result of our collaboration that we received that award from our Homeland Security. We are the node. In California, there's a mutual aid law enforcement system. So one of the questions I get asked similar to that is, are we ready? How would we handle a large-scale incident? California is divided up into regions for law enforcement mutual aid response. Our area is made up of 7 surrounding counties, from Kern County on the south up to Mariposa County on the north. All of the sheriffs vote for a sheriff to be the coordinator for the region, and I was voted to be that sheriff, but with the other 6. So in Fresno County, here's how it works. Let's take a real incident. Let's say, for instance, the city of Selma has a very large-scale incident, and they quickly overwhelm them in their resources. They will call the sheriff's office, and they will say, I need people, or I need a bomb dog, or I need this, or I need that. Then we look at county-wide to see what resources we have, and we provide it to that city. Now, let's say it involves a lot more resources than what we need in Fresno County. Then we put the word out to the other 6 counties of the 7-county region and say, we need 20 more people, and agencies start sending people. If it gets bigger than the region, it goes to the state. It's very organized, it's very systematic, and it works very well. Chancey, that's how that worked. If they activated mutual aid, we had people up there. We started contacting agencies in the county of Fresno. So we sent people, and the city of Fresno sent people up when they needed law enforcement mutual aid. The fires activated the mutual aid system. We'll contact our lieutenant who coordinates that, and they start making phone calls. And we keep track of it because many times the service is reimbursable, not always, but sometimes. The rim fire, when we went, some of that was reimbursable, so we knew who we sent, how much, thank you, how long they spent, and we knew how much money that we could actually collect back after that activity. What we want to avoid, and one of the incidents that occurred, the Dorner shooting down in Southern California, when we have a major incident, such for us it was Minkler in 2010, we critique it, we tear it apart and say, how could we have responded better? The latest one is the Dorner case, where it's very difficult for law enforcement agencies when they hear of something going on. What do you want to do? You want to go. You just want to go. But what happened in the Dorner case is there was so much self-dispatch that they had so many resources they couldn't deploy them all. So one important thing to think about is if you have an incident and it turns into days long, you don't use all your resources at once. You got to plan for the next shift, and the next shift, and the next shift. So that was and I'll never forget the story that the San Bernardino sheriff said. They were up in the mountains at this Dorner case. In the snow, it was storming. And he said all of a sudden, out of the snow comes these LAPD officers. And they're not prepared. And you go, who are you and where'd you come from? Well, they'd taken their own helicopter, dropped down their own strike team, and here they appeared out of the snow, not used to Los Angeles City and in the mountains, and they weren't quite sure what to do, but it was a real issue because attention had to be taken off of what they were supposed to be doing onto now how do we take care of these guys who don't have the right equipment and weather gear. So we really take a hard look. Anytime, for instance, something happens, for instance, in a courthouse across the nation, if there's a security breach, I say, could that happen here? We tear it apart. And we take a look at our own security procedures and say, really, could it happen here? Do we need to tighten up somewhere and do something different? So we are engaged. We have a lot of help. And I want to get back to the city of Fresno. Every single day, their officers are helping our deputies, and our deputies are helping their officers. We do not pay attention to artificial boundaries. We don't hit a wall and say, oh, we can't go there. If they need us, we go. And if we need them, they come. And I think that's the important message to get out to the public. Lorraine? Well, we are continually looking at that. For instance, we looked at a joint property and evidence building, and then the economy hit. Nobody had the money to do that. We are going to be building a new dispatch center, and we invited the city of Fresno to come in and take a look at it. They don't have the money to even help out on building something like that. So any chance we get, we try and collaborate. One thing I remind people is there's more than one city in Fresno County. There are 15 cities in the county of Fresno. One of the things that I work hard at is really bringing together all 15 cities. You got the city of Clovis, you have Reedley and Sanger and Selma and San Joaquin, where we have our contract, and Huron and Firebaugh. This is a big responsibility, and it's countywide. It's just not in the middle of the county that we need to worry about. It's everybody. For example, if a small city has a homicide, I will do, if asked, I will conduct that homicide investigation, or my detectives will, for them, and we won't charge them. We don't charge them for that, because it doesn't happen often enough for them to have the expertise to deal with it. Now, if they have a major crime that they normally would take, but they say, Sheriff, we'd like you to take, we have an MOU and payment agreement, so that if they have a major burglary and they want us to do it for them, internal affairs investigations, if they want us to do it for them, if they want only I-Bureau, we have contracts where they will reimburse it. But officer-involved shootings and homicides and instant aid, of course, we don't charge the smaller cities for doing that. It's an important thing to make sure that we get proper prosecution, and you have to have the expertise to carry those cases to the DA so we can get a good filing. Other questions? Yes, sir. We have our narcotics team in place, and we're going to keep them in place. You saw out of those 411 deputy sheriffs, about 110 of them are assigned to the courts. You can see how small that pool becomes when I have to allocate them all over Fresno County and take out our homicide detectives, sexual assault, domestic violence. That pool of deputies get very, very small. But our narcotics, like our Ag Task Force, is still important because they contribute to the crime that our deputies respond to. So we have to have those narcotics in place. We're going to keep that ordinance in place. It's very important, because one thing you don't hear a lot about is publicly are the people that support what we're doing, the citizens that come and tell us, I'm afraid for my family. I'm afraid because the people are carrying guns. They have gun turrets in these fields. They're using chemicals I'm not allowed to use on my orchard. The smell is horrendous. So we hear that. The board gets phone calls on that. So we know that we've got citizen support for what we're doing, and we're going to continue. We had a big effort in Squaw Valley last year. Bill. Sure, I'll comment on that. It's business as usual. I don't like the way it rolled out. I truly don't like the way that whole thing rolled out. If they wanted to have the discussion and move that direction, they should have at least let me know. And they didn't. I think the first time I heard that this was on the board agenda was when the bee called me the Monday before and said, well, what's this all about? It's going to be on the board agenda tomorrow that they're going to merge the sheriff's office and the coroner's. And I went, let me make a phone call. I really don't like the way it rolled out. However, it is what it is. We accept our challenges. We embrace our challenges. And I did a facility inspection last Friday at the morgue and at the coroner's office. It's a beautiful building. I want to give Dr. Haddon credit. His legacy will be that building. And I talked to the pathologist. They says, "What are we going to change this and we're going to change that?" I go, "You guys are the subject matter experts. I'm not going to change anything you do. Dr. Haddon never did an autopsy. I'm not going to be doing an autopsy. You guys do that." And so they're going to continue business as usual. Their opinions are their opinions. We're not going to step in. We join, now I think it's 50 other counties out of the 58 as a sheriff's coroner office. And I know there's been discussion about, well, there's a conflict of interest. They've overcome it, so we can too. Could you guys stand up? I do want to recognize them, but these are the people that make it happen. We are proud to serve you. We put the service in public service, and that's going to continue to be our mission. So thank you very much.